Open up 109. Morris, I said... Jesus Christ!
The story begins with a dangerous criminal named Frank Morris, who's being transferred to a high-security prison called Alcatraz, a prison built on an island surrounded by cold ocean waters from where no inmate had ever escaped. But Frank wasn't an ordinary prisoner. He was infamous for breaking out of several prisons before, yet no one had ever dared to even think about escaping from Alcatraz. As soon as Frank arrived, he was thoroughly searched and locked inside his cell, where he was supposed to spend the rest of his life. The next morning, during breakfast, Frank met an old inmate named Litmus, who had a pet mouse he treated like family. While talking to Litmus, Frank noticed another prisoner named Wolf, who was openly trying to provoke him, but Frank ignored him and kept talking. Later, Frank was called to the warden's office for a briefing, where the warden warned him not to try escaping, saying many had come and gone, but none ever made it out. However, during the conversation, Frank secretly stole a nail clipper from the warden's desk, a tiny object that could prove very useful in a place like Alcatraz. Back in his cell, Frank hid it inside his Bible. A little later, during the group shower, Wolf came back and tried to mess with Frank again. But this time, Frank didn't hold back. He beat Wolf badly, earning himself a strong reputation inside the prison. No one dared to mess with him again. Over time, the prison library became Frank's second home, where he met English, the prison librarian. English had been serving a life sentence, so he spent most of his time reading and had long given up hope of freedom. Both Frank and English shared a love for history books, which turned into a deep friendship. During this time, Frank also met Doc, a talented artist who spent most of his days painting. Doc believed that in a place like Alcatraz, any man could lose his mind, but art kept him sane. One evening, a guard offered Frank a carpenter's job that paid 15 cents an hour, but trouble was on the way. One day, while all prisoners were outside their cells, Wolf attacked Frank again, this time with a weapon. Doc quickly warned Frank, allowing him to block the attack with his jacket. A fight broke out, and when guards tried to stop them, Wolf attacked a guard too. As a result, both Frank and Wolf were thrown into solitary confinement, known as D-Block, a small dark cage no one wanted to be in. Frank was furious. He was punished for simply defending himself. After 2 long weeks in that cell, Frank was finally released. Back in his routine, Frank befriended Charlie, another prisoner doing time for a major robbery. Charlie regretted trying to cross the border after his crime, a mistake that made his punishment worse. The next day, the warden made a surprise inspection and saw a painting of himself hanging in a prisoner's cell. At first, he seemed to like it, but within seconds, his pride took over, and he ordered that Doc's paintings be removed from the prison immediately. This shattered Doc completely. In his anger, Doc intentionally cut off 3 of his own fingers, an act of silent rebellion against the warden. As the guards rushed for help, Frank just stood there, silently watching his broken friend. That night, sitting in his cell, Frank noticed a cockroach crawling out of a vent, and suddenly an idea sparked in his mind. Maybe that vent led to an escape route. The next day, during lunch, Frank met 2 brothers, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin, who recognized him from a previous prison. As they talked, they discussed how escaping from Alcatraz was impossible since the island was surrounded by freezing ocean water and strong currents. But this conversation planted a new idea in Frank's mind. He wanted to be the first man to ever escape from Alcatraz. That very night, Frank took out the nail clipper he had stolen from the warden's office and began scraping the cement around the air vent in his cell. Whenever he heard the sound of guards approaching, he quickly hid the clipper inside his Bible and pretended to read. Slowly, his hard work began paying off. The cement around the vent started to weaken. Meanwhile, during visitation time, English met his daughter, but found it difficult to speak. She had grown up without him, and he deeply regretted missing her entire childhood. On the other side, Charlie met his wife and learned that his elderly mother was very sick and had only a few months left. This painful news made Charlie desperate to escape and see her one last time. The next morning, Frank revealed his escape plan to John and Charlie. According to Frank, the salty air and moisture had weakened the prison's walls. If they carefully scraped the cement around the vents, they could remove the grills and reach the pipeline tunnels behind them. From there, they could crawl through the pipes and escape. But But the real problem was the ocean. How would they cross it? Frank suggested that Clarence, who worked in the laundry and clothing section, could secretly steal raincoats and rubber cement. With those materials, Frank could build a raft and life jackets. Everyone agreed, and the Great Escape Plan began. That night, Frank continued digging around the vent, while Charlie kept watch from his cell to warn him if any guard came by. The work was slow and exhausting. The nail clipper was too small and dull, so Frank's hands started bleeding. The next morning, he told everyone about the struggle and said they needed a stronger tool. Then, Frank looked at his spoon, rubbed it against his shoe to make it dirty, and complained to the guard that it was unusable. When the guards replaced the spoons, Frank and the others distracted them so he could secretly steal an extra spoon. Later, Frank traded 20 days of desserts with Litmus to get more materials and melted the spoon together with the nail clipper and a coin to create a powerful digging tool. That night, as Frank worked faster, a guard suddenly showed up. Charlie didn't notice him in time. Luckily, English distracted the guard by talking to him, giving Charlie a chance to punch the wall bars and warn Frank. Frank quickly hid everything. They got lucky that night, but Frank realized he couldn't rely on Charlie completely. Over the next few days, Frank discovered that the vent grills were also screwed in tightly, so he needed another kind of tool. While working in the carpenter's shop, he secretly made a small wrench, but to get it past the metal detector, Frank cleverly held a rusty iron piece in his hand. When the alarm went off, he handed the guard the rusty metal and walked away, hiding the real tool in his shoe. Back in his cell, Frank used the wrench to remove the grill completely. Behind it, he saw a network of pipes, maybe the path to freedom. But he knew they needed one more trick to fool the guards. So they decided to make fake human heads. Frank gathered old newspapers, mixed them with cement dust, and shaped a human face. John brought real hair from the barbershop, and Charlie collected paint for the skin tone. Together, they made realistic heads that could fool any guard during night checks. Charlie also crafted fake vent grills that looked just like the real one. This way, when they escaped, they could replace the originals so the guards wouldn't notice anything missing. That night, Frank tested his fake head and grill. He crawled up through the vent, following the pipes, until he reached a heavy metal door blocking the way out. He couldn't open it alone. Meanwhile, a guard was making his rounds. When he stopped at Frank's cell, he suspected something, but eventually walked away. Frank barely escaped being caught and realized the plan still needed adjustment. The next morning, Frank and Charlie discussed the incident. By now, both John and Clarence had finished making their fake heads too, so all of them decided to stick with the plan. That night, John and Charlie reached the same metal door again. Working together, they realized they could cut it open, but it would require advanced tools. During a music class the next day, Charlie spotted an old electric fan. He immediately thought it could be turned into a cutting tool. He traded all his desserts to get it from Litmus and hid it inside an instrument box to smuggle it out. Once Frank got the fan, he modified it into a powerful tool, and that night they used it to cut through the metal door. The noise was loud, but luckily, the guards ignored it. Finally, they had opened their path to freedom. After weeks of planning and hard work, Frank, John, Clarence, and Charlie were finally ready. They decided that Tuesday night would be the night they'd make history, the night they'd escape from the world's most secure prison. That morning during breakfast, Frank quietly placed a small flower on the dining table in memory of Doc, his friend who had lost everything. The warden saw the flower and got furious. Crushing it under his boot, he reminded Frank that there were no feelings allowed in Alcatraz. This act deeply angered Litmus, who tried to confront the warden, but before he could, Litmus suddenly collapsed from a heart attack and died right there in front of everyone. Later that day, the warden suddenly ordered a cell inspection in Frank's block. He searched Frank's room thoroughly, but found nothing. Not the fake head, not the tools, not a single clue. Furious and humiliated, the warden ordered Frank and Charlie's cells to be swapped, thinking that maybe it would break their plan. Meanwhile, Wolf had been released from solitary confinement and was once again looking for revenge. But before he could attack Frank, English stopped him, grabbing him just in time and saving Frank's life again. That night, the four men, Frank, John, Clarence, and Charlie, decided to meet inside the utility corridor where the pipes ran behind their cells. But right when it was time to go, Charlie froze. Fear took over him, and he refused to continue. As the others moved forward, Charlie sat helplessly in his cell, realizing he was letting his one chance slip away. Meanwhile, Frank, John, and Clarence crawled through the narrow tunnels, climbed up the pipe, and reached the roof. Now, they had to stay quiet and avoid the searchlight that swept across the prison yard. Moving slowly in the dark, they finally reached the prison wall. Back below, Charlie finally gathered the courage to follow. He crawled through the vent and reached the metal door, but without help, he couldn't lift it alone. The escape was over for him. His fear had cost him his freedom. Meanwhile, on the roof, Frank, John, and Clarence waited for the perfect moment. When the lights turned away, they climbed down the far side of the wall and touched the ground outside Alcatraz, something no inmate had ever done before. They ran silently across the yard, crossed a service road, and reached the shoreline. They worked quickly, pulling out the raincoat raft and life vest they had spent weeks building. Using their breath, they started inflating it, an exhausting task, but there was no turning back now. The night was cold, the wind was strong, and the waves were rough, but they pushed the raft into the black water and disappeared into the darkness of the ocean. The next morning, when the guards made their usual rounds, everything seemed normal, until one of them tried to wake Frank. When he pulled back the blanket, the fake head rolled onto the floor. The guards froze in shock. The alarm sounded, echoing through the entire island. Soon, it was discovered that 3 prisoners were missing: Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. A massive manhunt began immediately. Police boats surrounded the island, helicopters searched the coastline, and divers scoured the freezing waters. But no trace of the 3 men or their raft was ever found. Some believed they drowned in the cold currents of the bay, but deep down, the warden knew Frank Morris had done the impossible. He had escaped from Alcatraz. To protect the prison's reputation, the warden officially declared that the 3 men were dead, but the world didn't believe it. Frank Morris became a legend, the man who outsmarted America's most secure prison. Even after a year-long secret investigation, no bodies were ever recovered, no evidence ever found, which could only mean one thing: they made it, and with that, the movie ends.